When you think of some of the most memorable television and cinematic spectacles in action, science fiction, fantasy, and horror genres, you instantly think of The Terminator, Terminator 2 and 3, Aliens, The Abyss, Tremors, The Walking Dead. The list goes on. And the one common thread in all of those is GALE ANNE HURD, our featured guest this month. A legendary writer, producer, and pioneer for women in film at a time when female producers were a rare commodity, and who helped usher in a new kind of hero in the likes of Sarah Connor and Ellen Ripley. In addition to all her amazing production credits, GALE was governor of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and has received numerous Lifetime Achievement Awards, including the prestigious Laura Ziskin Award, which honors a woman in the film industry whose leadership, vision, and courage set the standard for other women to follow. This month, I had the distinct pleasure of speaking with GALE in between parts 1 and 2 of The Walking Dead's final season. We got to talk about her most influential stories as a young girl, working under trailblazing filmmaker Roger Corman, the making of The Terminator, and the lasting impact of Aliens, what the future holds for the film industry. Here's what GALE had to say. Welcome, everyone, to our July edition. We are high up in the clouds with excitement as we are joined by legendary film and television producer GALE ANNE HURD. GALE, we are thrilled to have you with us on the program.
Thanks for inviting me.
Now, over the years, you've had tremendous success in the sci-fi and horror genres, especially. Were you into those kinds of stories as a kid? Were you into comic books and all things scary as a young girl?
Absolutely. I think one of the misconceptions is that girls and young women aren't fans of genre, whether it's comic books or horror, fantasy, science fiction. I was a fan of all of those. In fact, I advised the local public library on acquisitions for their children's department because there was no such thing as YA at the time. It was all either children's or adult.
In much the same way as Roger Corman began working in the mailroom and worked his way up, you left Stanford with a degree in economics, joined him at New World Pictures doing admin work, and worked your way up, eventually giving way to your own production company. How influential was Roger to you in your career, and how different would things have turned out working for someone else?
Well, first of all, I have degrees in economics and communications. So I have a grounding in film and television, not just economics. And that's why Roger hired me, actually, because I had the highest GPA of anyone in the communications department. And I wouldn't be where I am today. You wouldn't be talking with me. I probably wouldn't have had a career in film and television if Roger hadn't hired me. Because at the time when he hired me, which was 1978, women did not progress through the ranks very quickly.
Right.
And with him, I did. I started in 78, and by 1980, 81, I was producing for him.
And then you went out on your own, and going out on your own can be very scary, a horror movie of its own kind. What gave you confidence and an assurance that you could do it, that you could produce movies on your own?
I had none. I absolutely did not. Roger basically had the confidence in me that I didn't have myself. And he told me that I'd learned everything he could possibly teach me. And he offered me a position overseeing a group of films he was making in Peru. Or he suggested that I go out on my own. And I decided to give it a try. And the first film was The Terminator.
Yeah. And more iconic films in the history of cinema followed as well. Going back to The Terminator, a film that you produced and co-wrote with James Cameron, a concept that came out of a fever dream that James had that I had read. I'm curious what elements of the film had your stamp on them?
I would say that Jim has always been a supporter of strong women. Mm. And people would like to credit the fact that Linda Hamilton is such a strong character. But I think that was something that we shared. And it may go back to the fact that Jim actually reported to me the first time that we worked together, which was on Battle Beyond the Stars. And I was the assistant production manager. And he started out as a builder in the model prop room. And then ultimately, I helped him rise to become the art director of the film. But at the same time, he was still working under me. And he didn't have a problem with it, which I have to say is not the case with a lot of men in the 70s.
Mm. Did you have to convince him to direct?
No. In fact, Jim had already directed. He directed a short film, which is what got Roger Corman's attention, called Xenogenesis, with an Xeno. And it was fantastic. And if you track down that film, you'll see that a lot of the designs for both Terminator, the Hunter Killers, as well as Avatar, had their origins in that film.
Let's be honest for a second. Sequels are rarely better than the originals, yet you oversaw two of the greatest films and greatest sequels of all time in Terminator 2 and Aliens. What do you think is the secret to making a great sequel?
Hire Jim Cameron.
That's good.
No, I mean, honestly, I think that the point is not to remake the first film. Ridley Scott's Alien is a perfect film in my mind. But it's more of a gothic horror film. Right. It's not a war or a combat film. So when Jim and I talked about Aliens, we said, we can't improve on the original. There is no way. So let's do something different. And that's why Aliens is a combat film. Obviously, it's still a horror film. Obviously, you're still dealing with, the alien warriors, but you're now also dealing with the alien queen.
Right.
So you take it up a notch, and the same was true of Terminator 2.
Aliens with Ripley, and then along with Sarah Connor, created the badass female lead as we know it. I know that there were difficulties in getting the film made with the British crew, but what were some of the obstacles in getting the film made from a story perspective? Was there any resistance in having Ripley as a lead, the dynamic between Ripley and Newt, and even that epic mother-to-mother showdown between Ripley and the alien queen?
Well, I have to give Fox credit for embracing the story from the very, very beginning. And there were a number of administrations there. But Larry Gordon was especially supportive of that story, as well as our executive producers, Walter Hill, David Giler, and Gordon Carroll. And with their support, the only obstacle we really had to overcome was Fox's unwillingness to pay Sigourney Weaver $1 million to reprise her role as Ripley.
Shifting gears a little bit, what does a day in the life look like for you? And what are some of your core responsibilities?
Well, I very much like being a producer on set. But obviously, so you have the development process. And so at that point, I think what people are often surprised to learn is that it's very often that producers are the ones who come up with the original idea, whether it's adapting existing intellectual property or even an idea that a producer may have of their own. And then we hire a writer, we arrange for the financing of the screenplay, sometimes in concert with the director, but not always. And if the director isn't involved at the screenplay level, they're brought on board after the production is ready to go. And I work very closely with the line producer to put together the schedule and the budget. And from the earliest stages, it's important to understand how to market the film. I'm not someone who is attracted to a project just because it's easy to market, but you do need to understand that if you make a great film, you have to know how to sell it to an audience. And luckily, when I worked for Roger Corman, I headed up the marketing department at New World Pictures. So, that was another quill in my arsenal.
Right. And marketing, of course, is becoming more and more critical, especially in pre-production now on films, I imagine.
It's always been important. And, I assume that that's also the reason that we're seeing more and more remakes, more and more sequels, because there's already awareness of a particular title.
In addition to the aforementioned films, you've produced comic book titles like The Punisher and The Walking Dead. The horror anthology series Lore was terrific and cut way too short. I'm wondering, what are the specific things that speak to your gut that you look for and find irresistible in a project?
I really love character-driven stories. I love stories that reveal something about the human condition. I particularly respond to stories about ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances who find the courage within themselves they never knew they had to overcome all obstacles and succeed. And I think you'll find that that's true of almost everything I've ever done, including my documentaries.
As a true pioneer for women, what advice would you have for young women today pursuing a career in the film industry? And what are some of the challenges you still see to this day?
Well, my advice would be the same for men and women, which is it's a changing industry right now. And we don't really have the same opportunities that I had. There are fewer independent companies. Staffs are being slashed, as you're seeing every time you open the trades. Yes. Yeah. And so I think it's important to have a skill set that people will pay you for. So that would be, if you're a producer, make sure you also wear another hat, whether that's as a line producer or a director or a writer. I think those are all absolutely key.
You mentioned change. Even before the pandemic, there started to be an industry shift in the consumption of film with the advent of streaming services. What are your thoughts on streaming, and what do you see for the future of the film industry?
Streaming is wonderful. Let's face it, we all love to be able to binge watch shows. But the interesting thing is that it turns out that audiences love to wait for something they're excited about. And I think it's true of streaming, it's true of cable, and it allows people to interact on social media on the same day when a new episode for a TV series is released, the way that they can when a film comes out on opening day. At the same time, with the advent of streaming, there really isn't an aftermarket, although that may be changing as well. I don't think Netflix ever thought that they might have to sell their library or license it, but that was how revenue was generated, by feature films and broadcast television going into syndication and cable TV being sold to streaming. And we're also seeing, that there won't be profit participation at some point in the future, simply because of that, because there are no aftermarkets, which is a game changer for all of us, who may go a couple of years between projects. You really rely on profit participation to keep you going.
What projects or accomplishments are you most proud of, and why?
I think that the Terminator I'm most proud of because it was my first. It was my first independent feature film. And The Walking Dead because it's become such a phenomenon and beloved by fans all over the world. I love the fact that we've created the Walking Dead family, which unites people, including the cast and the crew, as well as the fans. And then my most recent documentary, The YouTube Effect, which is about the game changer that YouTube has been in media and as a social media platform. And that premiered just a couple of weeks ago at the Tribeca Film Festival and is directed by Alex Winter.
Oh, nice. In addition to that project, do you currently have others in the pipeline that you can share with us?
I never talk about anything until it's in production. I believe if you do, it's a jinx. Obviously, if a financier wants to announce it, I'm all for it. But until such time, I'm actually not even allowed to speak about anything that's in the pipeline that hasn't already been announced. I'm excited about the new Walking Dead spinoffs. I'm glad that we continue to be able to tell those stories. I'm excited about the YouTube Effect. I'm also excited because a previous documentary that I produced about Wilma Mankiller, the late Native American woman who was the first woman to be principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, is just now this month featured on the American Quarter. So it's a very exciting time, and I hope there are even more opportunities for women, both behind the camera and in front of the camera. And I know I plan to continue mostly behind the camera. It's rare that I do a lot of publicity. So, I just felt it was important to talk with you.
Well, I can't thank you enough. It has been an honor and a privilege. We're definitely huge fans of your entire portfolio and for being an incredible trailblazer for women in film and women in business in general. So thank you very much for that, Gale.
Well, thank you.
If you'd like to check out more of GALE ANNE HURD's work or revisit the best of the best, you can find The Terminator on a variety of digital platforms, including Hulu, Amazon Prime, the Roku channel, and Showtime. Aliens is on Hulu and Starz, and The Walking Dead seasons 1 through 10 are on Netflix and AMC, with AMC also running the latest, season 11, on AMCplus.com. And don't forget some other spectacular gems like The Abyss, Tremors, The Punisher, The Hulk, and of course Terminator 2 and 3. Her breadth of work is truly astounding.